Entire towns have been wiped off the map. Over 100 people confirmed dead, more missing, families torn apart, homes destroyed, streets erased. This is a deadly disaster of historic scale, and it's not over yet. Just after 2 a.m., the skies opened above the Texas Hill Country. What began as a steady rain turned into a monster storm system, unleashing more than 15 inches of water in less than 12 hours. By dawn, rivers had surged past record levels. Flash floods exploded across Kerr, Travis, Llano, Blanco, and Hayes counties, swallowing entire communities. In Kerrville, sirens wailed through the darkness as water crashed into homes with no warning. One man, clinging to a roof with his 2 daughters, shouted to a rescue boat, "We didn't even have time to grab shoes." The Guadalupe rose by 28 feet in just a few hours. A surge so sudden and violent that officials are calling it one of the fastest rises ever recorded in Texas flood history. What began as a gentle flow winding through the hill country turned into a monster, ripping through towns like Center Point and Comfort without hesitation. In Center Point, entire blocks vanished beneath a wall of brown, raging water. Concrete, driveways were split apart, sidewalks crumbled, trees were uprooted and dragged like twigs, crashing into houses and breaking through windows. By the time the sun came up, at least 30 homes were gone, swept downstream in pieces. Their rooftops spotted miles away, tangled in riverbanks and bridges. One resident described waking up to the sound of what he thought was wind. "Then I looked outside, and my neighbor's house wasn't there anymore." Another man swam across what used to be his street, just to check if his elderly parents had made it out in time. In Comfort, the situation grew even more desperate. Floodwaters breached a local nursing home just before dawn, pouring through the main lobby and knocking over wheelchairs, furniture, and medical carts. The building lost power within minutes, leaving patients in total darkness as the water climbed floor by floor. Staff members moved fast, forming a human chain to carry fragile elderly residents upstairs, many of whom couldn't walk or speak. When the first responders arrived, they found nurses and aides on the roof, soaked to the bone, huddled around a dozen seniors wrapped in blankets, shivering in the rain, but alive. They saved every single person, but the building below, completely lost. This wasn't just property damage. This was a direct hit to the people least able to defend themselves. And with more rain in the forecast, local officials fear this might only be the beginning of a much longer disaster. "The water was above my chest in minutes," said one survivor, soaked and shivering at an emergency shelter in Bernie. "I thought I was going to die." Emergency crews are now calling this a mass casualty event. Not just a disaster, not just a crisis, but the kind of catastrophe that pushes every system to the edge. Across the region, helicopters are buzzing overhead, scanning for stranded families and rooftop distress signals. Airboats have been deployed from neighboring counties, gliding down streets that used to be highways, and high-water vehicles, massive trucks, capable of fording deep floods, have been brought in from across the state, many driven by National Guard units who arrive with barely an hour's notice. But even with everything in motion, access is brutally limited. Roads have vanished, turned into rivers, or swallowed by mudslides. Power lines lie tangled in the water, sparking and crackling, too dangerous to approach. Bridges are gone, washed out completely, their concrete slabs shattered, their steel supports twisted like ribbon, and that means first responders are forced to improvise, carrying gear by hand, hiking through knee-deep water, using drones just to scout safe routes. They're working around the clock. No sleep, no breaks, fueled by adrenaline and radio calls. But despite their training, they're overwhelmed. Too many calls, not enough. Boats, not enough eyes in the sky. Not enough time. Dispatchers are triaging distress signals, prioritizing cries for help by urgency. In some areas, rescuers have to make impossible choices: who to reach first, who to come back for, who might not make it if the storm turns again. And still, they keep going, because somewhere out there a child is clinging to their roof, a grandmother is waiting in a second-story bedroom, a family is trapped behind a collapsed bridge. With the water rising again, as of this evening, the situation has grown even more tragic. Over 100 fatalities have been confirmed, and officials fear that number will only climb. The Texas Department of Emergency Management has warned that dozens of people remain unaccounted for, many of them believed to have been caught in the floodwaters with little to no warning. Some were likely trapped inside their homes. Others may have been swept away in their vehicles or while camping near riverside areas when the surge hit. In Fredericksburg, the devastation took a heartbreaking turn. A popular local camp full of families, hikers, and weekend travelers was completely washed away in a matter of minutes. According to witnesses who survived, the sound of rushing water was followed by something even more chilling: Screams in the distance, just moments before an entire row of cabins was ripped from the ground and carried downstream. Emergency response. Teams have been working tirelessly in the area, using every resource available. Drones equipped with thermal imaging are now sweeping the region from above, while underwater sonar devices are being used to scan rivers and lakes for any signs of survivors or victims. Search crews are also going cabin by cabin, clearing debris and marking each location with spray paint to indicate status. For the families of the missing, each hour without news feels like a lifetime. And for the first responders, the mission is growing harder by the day, not just physically, but emotionally. Because this isn't just a weather event anymore. It's a massive ongoing search for lives that were stolen in the dark, when no one saw it coming. In the early hours of the morning, the National Weather Service issued a rare and alarming alert, particularly dangerous situation, flash flood emergency. This is one of the highest level warnings they can issue, reserved only for the most life-threatening and fast-moving flood events. It signaled that this was not just another storm. It was a crisis unfolding in real time. Radar data was staggering. Rainfall was coming down at rates of up to 4 inches per hour, overwhelming storm drains and natural waterways within minutes. By sunrise, parts of the central region had already recorded historic rainfall totals, with some areas seeing in a single day what they typically receive in an entire season. This wasn't a passing thunderstorm, it was a massive system fed by deep tropical moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, and worst of all, it had stalled in place. As the rain continued to fall on already saturated ground, rivers and creeks had nowhere to go. In New Braunfels, the situation turned critical. Both the Comal and Guadalupe rivers overflowed, breaching their banks and flooding the heart of downtown. Businesses that had been preparing for weekend foot traffic found their storefronts submerged. Families living nearby were forced to evacuate with little warning, some escaping with only what they could carry. At the same time, the storm caused widespread power outages across the state. Thousands of residents in New Braunfels alone lost electricity. Statewide, more than 200,000 utility customers are now in the dark, many in rural or flood-isolated areas. Utility crews are working nonstop through driving rain and deep water to restore service, but conditions remain too dangerous in some zones. Officials warn that certain areas may remain without power for several days, especially where roads are impassable or lines are down in remote terrain. This is not just a storm event, it's a breakdown of infrastructure, a disruption of everyday life, and a test of human endurance. And with the system still hovering over the region, the threat is far from over. In response to the escalating devastation, Governor Greg Abbott has declared a state of emergency across 22 Texas counties, unleashing the full force of the state's emergency infrastructure. The declaration has triggered the deployment of National Guard troops, mobilized specialized search and rescue units, and opened the door for urgent federal disaster assistance. Within hours, FEMA teams were already en route to the hardest hit areas, setting up staging grounds and coordinating with local responders in what's quickly becoming one of the most complex flood operations in recent memory. Across the state, shelters in cities like San Antonio, Austin, and Waco are filling to capacity. Evacuees arriving soaked, barefoot, or in shock are being met by volunteers with dry clothes, food, and first aid. Many fled their homes in the middle of the night with no time to pack, carrying only their children and pets. The mood is somber but unified, people helping people, even as they process the enormity of what's been lost. Meanwhile, normal life has come to a standstill. School districts have announced closures across multiple counties, and 4th of July celebrations, usually a time of unity and joy, have been canceled or postponed indefinitely. Cities that were preparing for fireworks and festivals are now operating in full emergency mode. Transportation, too, is in collapse. Major interstate corridors, I-10, I-35, and dozens of state highways are closed, completely cut off by high water, debris fields, and collapsed roadways. Some overpasses have been declared structurally unsound. Others have disappeared entirely beneath mud and current. Entire towns are now isolated. Places like Ingram, Campwood, and parts of Bandera are virtually unreachable, with rescue crews forced to use air support or backroad convoys just to check in on survivors. Local officials are pleading with residents to stay off the roads, warning that even brief breaks in the rain don't mean it's safe. Texas is in a state of lockdown not by choice, but by necessity, and the storm is still not done. In heartbreaking scenes across Texas, families search shelters for missing loved ones. Social media is flooded with pleas. Has anyone seen my sister? My parents live near the river, please. Someone check on them. Rescue operations continue, but time is running out. Tonight, the weather remains volatile. A second round of storms is moving across East Texas, triggering new warnings from Tyler to Lufkin. Flash flood alerts remain in effect across central and southern parts of the state. The National Hurricane Center is also monitoring the Gulf for potential tropical development, which could bring more rain in the coming days. This is far from over, and as the water slowly recedes in some areas, the true scope of destruction is just beginning to emerge. Entire neighborhoods gone, roads gone, lives shattered. Local leaders are urging residents to stay out of flooded zones and to never drive through high water. Turn around, don't drown isn't just a slogan. Tonight's life-saving advice. One woman lost her life trying to drive across what she thought was a shallow intersection. It was a 12-foot drop. Aerial footage shows a haunting picture. Houses surrounded by lakes that didn't exist yesterday. Trees uprooted, vehicles stacked on top of each other. Schools, churches, and homes, and recognizable beneath the WATERLINE. Llano County emergency crews recovered the bodies of a family of 4 near a washed-out bridge. In Hays County, a mother and child were found in the remains of their overturned SUV. These are not just numbers, they are people, families, futures, stories, cut short by water that moved too fast. Donations are pouring in. Relief organizations, like the Red Cross and Texas Baptist Men, are on the ground. Volunteers are delivering blankets, dry clothes, and bottled water. But the need is massive. Local officials say they've never seen anything like this, and many are now asking, could this have been prevented? Experts warn that urban development, deforestation, and aging drainage systems have left many Texas towns vulnerable to flooding. With climate patterns growing more extreme, events like this may no longer be once in a century. Tonight, Texas is grieving, recovering, and bracing for what comes next. If you're in the affected areas, stay safe, stay home, and check on your neighbors. And if you're watching from afar, remember, this isn't just a Texas problem. This is a warning to all of us about how fast everything can change. We'll continue to follow this story closely. Please subscribe for the latest updates and keep Texas in your prayers tonight. Thank you for watching. Stay safe.